about it, man, a lot of good scenes here. Obviously, the smoothie scene is my favorite scene by far. Aaron doing a smoothie. It's a beautiful scene using the yaw with a little stronger powers, right, than Ymir had. With this scene here, it's really well done too, I think, because one thing that's made this scene. Oh my god, goddamn. One thing I think made this scene really well, and this is compared to the manga immediately, right? One thing I think made the scene stand out here a lot more in the anime than in the manga was that when you read this scene, it's a really good scene, it's a smooth scene, right? But here in the anime, you kept hearing him screaming like, "No, don't do it, YAMERU, YAMERU!" And so on. So you kept hearing his voice screaming in the background, his human voice, right? So it made the scene more emotional because you keep hearing him like, "Don't make me kill her," right? So yeah, this scene here was, I would say, even better here because it kind of gave us that emotional part of. What do you call it? Being forced to be a weapon or a tool or whatever, right? Like Aaron making him be his I was like his opening device. He's like, I need something to open this like being his tool, right? So I think that was that made the scene even better, right? It made the scene even stronger, having his voice there, like screaming at you in the background. So that really. Emotionally made this scene stronger, right? Like than in the original scene. Otherwise, kind of same thing, right? Obviously, I love the scene too when we see Gabi and Falco screaming. And I think that also, I guess, on the same note, this also works better, right? On the same as an anime, of course, because in the manga, it's like it's one panel, Gabi's angry, Falco's angry, screaming at oh, don't kill our friends, so on, right? Of course, having it actually being voiced, and this scene was longer than an anime. It was extended probably by a minute or so, but it definitely works a lot better, right? Because this clearly is like a voice acting scene where they have to actually scream, right, and so on. That being said, in the reaction part though, I really felt. I love it. Wasn't it right? Of course, it's doing Yotsuba, so for example in quintuplets, and I can only Yotsuba though. I just watched quintuplets, right, and it's like they ended. I'm gonna spoil it here, but they ended with like a sad Yotsuba scene, which is kind of like gloomy and not crying, but kind of like I'm really sad, So I was like, man, when I hear Gabi's like, what's happening? I was like, it's exactly like Yotsuba being sad in the last episode in top. It's like, man, is this like a weird meta thing? Because obviously she usually plays this like super Genki girls, right? She plays also, Ureka in Macadamia and so on. She plays like, Genki happy girls, right? And especially in the Kutaplet, which is a very, nice rom-com anime, right? And here's this like, war, but I am, so it's like a really weird, it is like a really weird setting, right? Between the animes. But that's a really good scene too there. I love this detail. So what happens, right, is that Sasha appears, and obviously we know she's like a masterful sniper, right? With her archery, as we've seen previously. Especially the episode was like actually a filler episode, which is season 2, I believe, right? It's an episode, I can't remember the episode this now, but it's an episode that's a straight up filler when Sasha fights like a really tiny titan. But anyway, she's using her, archery and her marksmanship and so on, right? So basically, you build up that Sasha's like an amazing sniper, right? She appears here, and she's fighting Peak, right? Best girl on best girl, and she just kills all Peak's, her boys, right? Peak has, her friendship, her, like, harem boys, right? She kills them all by sniping them. Because Sasha is an amazing sniper, right? And of course now then she utilizing a rifle instead of a bow and so on, but whatever. But I really like this in here then, because it's like a nice, I felt, detail here. Because we see Sasha shooting at them, right? And then the next scene what we see is this, like the, what's it called, like the cannon pipe. Yeah, the cannon pipe is like, it's false. I love that, another detail, that the cannon pipe is like aiming like this, right? Kind of like in this angle. And then it's like, and then it kind of falls down a bit. It's like, oh, he died, right? He died. Yeah, like this guy clearly died inside of it because Sasha is bad at sniping, so she gets him, even if you can't even see him. She's like, he's probably like somewhere inside of that thing and in this height, right? That being said, though, I do wonder, though, from an actual engineer standpoint, like if you shoot the guy controlling this this cannon pipe and so on, would it actually fall down then? Because it probably would stay in the same, like, it probably wouldn't be like, it probably wouldn't be like, it probably would actually stay, right? Because if he aimed in this direction, it probably, unless he dies, and his body kind of falls into it, and his body, like, makes it move downward. But anyway, I like it. It's a nice little scene how, he clearly probably got killed. I mean, because later on we do see him being dead, right? The actual the gunner, whatever we call it, the turret operator, the gunner, whatever his title is. He clearly dies later on, but this scene here is like he kind of gets falls into the cannon as Sasha got him, and then it's like he of course hints to us that he's probably dead, right? So that's kind of what makes my favorite scene there, because I like this the small finer detail. It's looks really nice there. Overall, the episode was, I think, a lot better than last week, and even from like a technical standpoint, because obviously, as I mentioned, say it briefly here again, right? Like, I just like controversy, no, but like I said it last week too, right? I talked about a lot about the CGI, as I worked with CGI myself, not that much. Like last year, I had a title of art director. Last year, my title was art director and UX director, even though obviously I work mostly with game design, like game design, UX design director. But of course, I spent a lot of my time in like complaining about modeling and so on to people, like, why are you doing the artist, right? But without talking about too much this week, the CGI, I think, is just that there was some issue with it from like a technical standpoint, like the Fresnel and other oscillation and so on. This from a technical standpoint, I would say like, now that CGI with like floss hair CGI, that doesn't work because you don't animate, you're not like separating the different hair strain and so on. That stuff is just like, for me, like an objectively weird CGI, right? But then we had the fights that they look very good and so on, right? They looked very good. But this episode here, I think, is kind of what I'm saying, right? Because last week, for me, it was like some scenes worked well and some did not work well, right? And that's why I find it kind of funny in the last comment review on my channel, as they have to come being like, no, it's the best thing ever, and all the comments like, it's the worst thing ever, right? Where I think in reality it's like, no, it's kind of like some scenes works, some scenes did not work. I would say that's more the reality. It's like, nah, it's like every single scene was good. But this episode, I think, clearly points it again, because this episode, I think, looked way better. Like these kind of thing here, fine, but yeah. So this kind of thing here, and this is obviously looks worse now, because I'm like, I'm freezing the scene, right? So it looks worse now because I get a pause scene here, and like it's like a beam from big. But this scene in motion looked a lot better, right, than like last week, I think, because here they're doing that Mappas thing where they're having this like running around, they're flying around peak, they're shooting, and I know it looks kind of crazy as a freeze screen, like but actually animated, and during the episode when it's on like 10 seconds every now and then, I think this looks really good, right? And that's kind of where I felt that the last episode was missing from like a technical, just how they're animating the fight, because regardless if it's CGI or not, it is kind of strange where they're kind of stiff and so on, right? And again, I mean, obviously last episode wasn't done like Berserk level, right? Or what's called X-Arm, that new anime that is like the worst thing ever. It obviously looked like they were moving pretty good as episode. But so here, these kind of scenes looked really stunning, I would say. They look way better, right? And that's kind of what I expected from Mappa, right? If you compare it to, for example, Jujutsu Kaisen, or as I mentioned, God of High School and so on, where they are really good at doing this, like spinning around, fight sequence and so on, right? So that's kind of where I think people are, in my opinion, then, like they can clearly do really well. Like here's another, like later on, kind of the character kind of goes under Peak's head, right, and they can fly around. So these scenes I think look really good, right? And I think this episode here had like much better performance, right, from just like a fighting standpoint, from the CGI standpoint and so on, right? It looks way better. I would say like at least twice good last week. So and that's quite a little bit where I'm coming from, right? Because I like to provoke it, but still, right, coming from a little bit, right? Like last week, where I'm like, well, I mean, some scenes worked, some didn't work. Here, I think every scene worked, right? And that's my point, that clearly, and people are gonna say like, no, but they did their best. Like, come on, from like a reviewing standpoint, it's like, nah, this works. This was way better. But anyway, so it was a good episode. I suppose more. Yeah, it's the CGI, but I think that part was really good. Zeke got owned. I love that. I think it's a really good, and if to me, it's like an Ishiyama kind of writing style, right? Because we have Zeke being like, yeah, you're gonna fight me? Where are you, Levi? He's screaming like, come on, Levi, come on, boy. Like he's like trying to, provoke him. He's trying to set up this moment, right? And then immediately when Zeke loses his focus, because someone else, Armin is nuking and so on. Immediately when Zeke loses his focus, Levis gets him. I love that because he's standing there trying to be like, come on, let's have like a cool anime fight. And no, he defeats him, on the side, right? And it's no, he immediately defeats him from like a backstab. I think it's that's good because he's also a winner, right? So that is really good. And for me, that to me is almost more badass than having like this. I don't know what would it be, Beast Titan versus Levi, like round 6 or something. Yeah, I almost kind of prefer it to be no, Levi just wins by killing him in the back. It's pretty good. It works fine for me strategy wise. But next episode's gonna be very interesting. It also seems to be like going for the big thing next week in the middle of it, given how this ended. It probably won't even be the cliffhanger. But anyway, another thing that I like generally, of course, is Armin nuking the harbor, right? You're destroying the whole fleet there, and you're seeing like Gabi and Falco being like, "Oh, he just nuked us." Like they're staring at the whole nuke, and they're like, "Oh, they just nuked us." They're just like, "Oh, I see what happened there." Because one thing that's interesting, right, because how he's ridiculously powerful, and it always felt to me, though, when I stand by saying this, that the Colossus Titan just feels really OP, right? If you talk about Titan powers. I mean, ignoring like the whole I can control Titans and like memory wipe and so on. But from like a fighting standpoint, this thing is like, oh yeah, he just destroyed the whole fleet by purely transforming. He's just like, oh, I just entered and I won. Right? It's like, so I think that I always felt this, honestly, right? Always felt this. I mean, again, ignoring the whole memory power and some kind of like time power, weird stuff that the founder can do, something like that, right? Which is kind of like undefined, weird mental powers. Ignoring that, because that obviously is the best power because you can control all the powers, right? So, it's the manipulative power, right? But otherwise, clearly, the Colossal Titan with Armin, it's always, I feel, right, it's most incredibly overpowered power. Yeah, he just won, right? He basically destroyed the whole fleet by just transforming. He's like, I'm here, I won, they all died. It's like, he didn't have to fight them. He has to use purely up here, right? And it's just really, really OP. I think it makes perfect sense sending him to fight the harbor, right? Because as we see this in here, there's no water anymore. Like him transforming at the harbor also removed all the water. It probably is coming back water from the edge, but all the ships of course are going to be stranded because even if they aren't destroyed, he also removed they can't move anyway. So it's a really effective way, right? To just send Armin to be like, oh, I'm just going to destroy the whole harbor and just strand all the ships, right? But it was a good scene though from a character standpoint because of course Armin, as a person, we saw it earlier seasons, right? He is not really into, of course, killing people and the whole should I do war and so on, right? So there wasn't much on that, but I did like it though. And of course, Armin leaves his form, right? And he looks down and like, oh, I just killed like a million people there. Oh shit, I really just destroyed these whole people here, and they all died. And it's like, oh, god damn it, right? But so there's like a massive, I guess, character development. I think one thing though, which I say lacks, but it's a little bit like Armin, he used to have a lot of problem, right, killing humans, and now he is like, we have a time skip, we haven't seen how he has reflected over this in between, and here he's like a mass murderer now, right? So it's a little bit like he jumped from being like, I don't want to kill one person, to being like, oh, I just killed like a million people. So it's a little bit, he went from like this, almost a pacifist, technical pacifist, into like, oh, I just destroyed this whole city. Oh. Yeah, so it's like maybe arguably a massive jump in personality. So I would love to see a little bit of like some, how I call it, reflective, right? Like some kind of inner reflection on Armin's mind, being like, maybe what I'm doing is wrong, right? And then we're probably gonna see more of that thing in the anime. It's a little bit that. I mean, he looked sad, right? So they gave us a little bit of his, and I think that was good because his even in Titan form, I think that he looked sad. I think that was good. Yeah, even Armin as a Titan was kind of like a crying face a little bit. It was like, oh man, I just killed everyone here. Like he looked sad even Titan. But it was very good. And yeah, I've said earlier again, but yeah, absolutely. I think Porco, as I mentioned there, I think that was arguably the best part that changed it from the manga. The hearing Porco screaming while Aaron was doing the smoothie, and of course Gabi screaming and so on too. But I really think that that made the scene so much better, honestly, because when he's doing the smoothie, I said at the beginning, I said again, you say end the view here. That was really good, like seeing him doing this smoothie and having Porco screaming like YAMERU, YAMERU, like don't do it, stop right during the whole the sequence. That really made the scene a lot more emotional in the anime. That was a scene that was way stronger in an anime form than in a manga form. I think a lot stronger. I said it earlier too, but I think it really was made stronger. But anyway, that's it, guys. Subscribe, press the like button. So good to subscribe. It's awesome. Now we're gonna go over to Twitch. Actually, I'm gonna watch the new Isekai that was tense on Twitch instead because thought the memory and K right. He got some issues with that anime, so we're going in a safe route here and put it on Twitch instead. And see you guys shortly with that. And then we're also doing Nonyon Byaru today, which I love. I'm a big Nonyon Byaru fan, and I love doing that after this anime, where I'm going over to like, it's the most wholesome anime ever. It's not English and so on. I'm like, this is the most wholesome thing ever. I love doing that. Attack on Titan. He's like massive full war, and then I go into this like, it's like cute girls like catching frogs. I'm like, yeah, this is anime. so anyway, see you guys shortly on Twitch. Link below for that. We will do the new Isekai. And I'll say it here again, though, it's like sort of point here. I really like that Isekai, Mushoku Tensei. So I'm fortunate to have to do it on Twitch, but that in my opinion is like holy man. Like I'm a big Isekai fan, right? And that's like one of the best Isekai I think in years. A new Isekai, really good Isekai. Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. That is. I was like surprised how good that Isekai was. I gave it like 10 out of 10. Episode 2. I was like, whoa. Really interesting. I won't point too much here again, but I won't spoil the scene. But I was like, man, an Isekai where the main character has, like, he remembers his bad stuff, like he has PTSD, so he remembers his bad life, and it affects him his new life, so on. So anyway, see you guys on Twitch with watching that anime, and again, that's like my favorite of the new animes. Of all the new animes, Mushoku Tensei is my favorite new anime of the season, right? Of the new animes. Obviously, we have Attack on Titan, we have other many sequels, but of the new animes, that's my number one, right? So, see you guys with that on Twitch, and subscribe, have a great day.